Hello everyone and welcome. This is the Oracle card reading for the Scorpio new moon that happened on the 13th of November 2023. This is just a quick reading of the Oracle cards that I always pull before a collective reading. That collective reading's already up on its on the channel, so if you want to check out a more in-depth guide to the astrology, that's the one for you. But this is just an overall message from source about that moon. I'm recording this on the 17th of November. That's a Friday, so it's a good couple of days after that new moon, and just bearing witness to what I've seen in my own life and the people around me and the people that I interact with. It's just sort of like a fundamental shift of self, right? The main sort of key points with the astrology where there was like a two-pronged effect with that new moon. Yes, it was being governed by Mars, opposite Uranus, squaring Lilith, very, very independent liberation energy. But a lot of the other signs were being governed by Venus. So Uranus was being governed by Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, who was playing a pivotal role of bringing in a new frequency that's in alignment with Source, with this liberation, quite rebellious energy. But Venus was governing that, governing Saturn, governing Mercury. So there was an element of peace, an element of diplomacy, along with this sort of breakout liberation energy. And I've just noticed on an individual level that this is kind of given a stronger sense of self and an ease, right? A grace with that. It's been really beautiful to watch. One of the things that happened a couple of days before that new moon was when Mars was opposite Uranus, which played a very, very pivotal part in the new moon itself. But the exact opposition was on the Saturday. So that would have been the 11th. And we had a March here that people were in uproar. Well, certain elements of political hierarchies were in uproar over it, thinking that it was going to cause chaos. There's going to be more violent sides of that protest. But it was a protest for peace, right? And actually on the day, it was a counter-protest group that got arrested. I think there may have been a couple in the main one, but it was mostly this counter protest. And what I thought really interesting about that, it was this liberation and this drive for peace in a very sort of war economy world that was being governed by Venus, right? Even though Mars was the ruler of Scorpio, and so traditionally the god of war, what we actually saw was a shift away from that frequency. Like, I'm not a big fan of always just referring to Mars as the god of war. I think there's so much more to Mars that we can work with in a more higher vibrational frequency. And I just thought that was really lovely witnessing that wasn't the potential disruptive energy it could have been, like in a really dramatic counterproductive way with that opposition with Uranus and the square to Lilith. But because of everything being governed by Venus, there was an element of as I said, grace, of harmony, a sense of diplomacy coming through. And I've certainly seen that on an individual level as well. So let's crack on. I'm going to be breaking down the cards often reading from some of the decks, because all of these decks I absolutely love. I really rate the people who've made them and what they've put in a lot of their messages. Don't always agree with everything. It's not always going to resonate, but that's not the point. We've got to be able to find the shades of grey in everything that we work with. So we've got the first card showing up here, and this is from the Krans Wild Unknown Archetypes deck. Love her decks, love what she writes in the books. I think she's a phenomenal channeler. I really, really appreciate the work that she does. So we've got the empty room, which is such an interesting construct, right? It seems like it is lacking, but it is full of potential. And this is kickstarting that new moon in the sign of Scorpio, the depths of the darkness that we can go to, the intensity of going into that dark box and figuring out what truth is, right? When we are surrounded by darkness, how do we find truth? How do we find the light? So this is the vortex, the abyss, the nothing. The empty room haunts us all. It is universal and all too frequent feeling of lack, of wanting, of the craving to fill ourselves with something, anything. We too often attempt to remedy the discomfort of the empty room by any means necessary, leading us to a culture of more. Ironically, the empty room is full to the brim with potential, yet we perceive it as not enough. This card is a cry for patience, for sitting within the barren walls of not knowing, for awaiting true vision and purpose before attaching to what we should do next to save our outward appearance. Be with the nothingness. Be with the impatience. The empty room has immense power. Let others wonder what you are doing. If you can settle into the magic of emptiness, you will soon hear its whispers of wisdom. When light, spaciousness, potential, possibility. Right, so this really makes me think of the very yin energy of this new moon, right? It was in Scorpio, a lot of stuff in Pisces, as well as Taurus, and these are all yin energies. And there is a sense of receptivity, of waiting, of being in a state of observation, not necessarily taking action around changes, and seeing what unfolds within you, and letting that untangible, the unseen, fill that empty room and give you more space. It's giving you more space. It's what feels like another side of this is the fact that we had that very liberating energy, liberating of a lot of chains, a lot of stuck emotional responses that are actually blocking our ability to expand. I think the Five of Pentacles and the Five of Cups came up in the collective reading, and they were in reverse, right? One of the main themes that I talked about throughout the All 12 Signs video series, if you've not seen it, go check it out, is a moving away. Like a Scorpio can often represent some really intense, heavy emotional energy. It's fixed water, pain, regret, anger, fury, paranoia, possession, jealousy, and it feels like this moon with this is clearing that empty energy, clearing those emotional energies and freeing up that space. We're not rejecting them, we're not hiding from them, we're not shaming them. It's an acknowledgement that they are part of the human condition, but they shouldn't have a full heavy hold over you, right? So it's allowing that empty room to create a new narrative, and I'll get to the new narrative when we get to the Ocean card. The next card up is, sorry, I just need to get the books, Karmic Relationships. This is from Rebecca Campbell's Oracle, the Starseed Oracle deck, and so this is Orion energy, polarity, soul growth, conflict. And what it's saying in this, I found it so poignant in regards to the fact that we're dealing with Uranus, we're dealing with Mars. These can be very sort of independent, potentially conflict driven, not driven, it's too strong of a phrase, but elements of conflict around these celestial bodies. And I really like what Rebecca has to say about this. Polarity causes conflict and highlights separation. However, because of this, conflict can also result in unity and growth. Too many misunderstandings are caused when we don't open our heart and mind to see things from a different point of view. When we go into reactive second-guessing mode, instead of gathering the courage to open our heart, we should admit that we may have reacted because of our own wounding, and then find mutual ground with the other, right? So I like how it's pointing towards the empty room of a clearing out and a releasing into the void, a lot of shame around our reactions, right? Sometimes we can dig in our heels and get really stubborn in that independence of thought, right? And seeing it as truth rather than an amalgamation of lots of different things that we can then come together with that. We're all innocent children looking to be seen, understood, and cherished. It's much harder to grow closer through conflict than it is to grow further apart. And yet that's the invitation of conflict. It's easy to react and take things personally. It's more challenging to see the innocence of all involved and find a way to grow closer through the conflict. It's through relationships that we grow the most. How can you soften your heart and drop your defenses enough to see things from a different point of view? How can you see the innocence of all involved? How can you learn to see the similarities rather than the differences? Now, this is highlighting the polarity that I talked about between that very independent energy of Mars and Uranus, framed by the network of Venus being in Libra, with that balance, with that diplomacy, with that harmony, governing Uranus, governing all those other planets that I talked about. And what I really liked was what it said is to where is it? How can you soften your heart and drop your defenses enough to see things from a different point of view? Mars in a yin sign is more on that defense space rather than the taking action into the outside world in terms of conflict. A square which is ruled by Mars is often linked into conflict. and like kind of winning at all costs, i.e. not seeing the other side's point of view. And what I really like is saying, do we need to have all the defenses that we think we need? I felt that Mars in Scorpio has been very protective. It's enhancing the things that are going to serve us in the long term because it's closing out a longer term cycle. Tomorrow it's going to make a conjunction with the Sun called a Cazimi, which is going to activate a new Mars cycle for the next 2 and a bit years, right? We're just coming out of one that was from Libra in October 2021. So Mars moving through this Scorpio energy, and it's going to conjunct in Scorpio, is clearing out the defenses that aren't actually going to serve us, that actually may make us a bit more confrontational, but strengthening that's going to serve us for the next part of the cycle. And then it was like soften your heart, right? Venus over in Libra governing all of this independent energy, but making sure we're not negating other people's individual experience and finding commonality within that without denying our own experience. It's a tricky line to walk. I know I talk about it quite a lot on this channel, of that the individual in society. We've got it really loudly with the North and South node in Libra and Aries. They're being governed by Venus and Mars. Venus and Mars played a very pivotal role in this moon. This moon felt, even though it wasn't an eclipse, it was the first eclipse after the eclipse cycle in Scorpio and Taurus, felt like a really big portal. And speaking of portals, well, we've got the Akashic Stargate, aligned with purpose, crossroads, no wrong path. So let me just get there. This is Carl Gray, Gateway of Light activation deck. All the decks are in the description box. A stargate is a portal that can take us through space and time to a whole other universe. It's based on the concept of the Einstein-Rosen bridge, or what is also known as a wormhole, where a speculative structure linking different points of space and time is created. In spirituality, a stargate is less about traveling on the physical three-dimensional level and more about making progress on the spiritual. Right, I've really noticed a shift across the board of people just being a bit more ease within themselves, observing new frameworks that are coming in that are more supportive of their mental health, of their strength of character. So many different variants just across the board. Just in the last couple of days, I've noticed it through the roof. A feature of many spiritual traditions is the idea that all of us have a stargate in our heart, right? So we're bringing back in that Venusian energy of the heart space, of making sure that, our heart has an electromagnetic field of 3 feet, our mind of 3 inches, right? Division tends to come from the mind, of that othering, of that separation, of making assumptions and expectations. The heart, by default, your actions that you take tend to be more of support and nourishment, both to yourself and to others. It's about getting that in alignment. Stargate in our heart that connects us with the central lattice of consciousness, the divine matrix. The Buddha acknowledged that we are the universe, while Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you. The Akashic Stargate transports us to a space where we are given the opportunity to make a decision to accelerate the realization of our life's purpose. Now, this is kind of linked into what I felt that seemed like a very soft energy in everybody that I've met. We're dealing with yin energy, of just a general vibrational frequency that's come through, that's allowing us to, having gone through this stargate, that is bringing us more back to our inherent purpose, rather than distractions, rather than limitations and frustrations and conflict that aren't actually propelling us forward, right? I'm going to be talking a little bit about conflict in a healthy way in the new moon, the full moon in Gemini, which is the next lunation. So it's interesting that that's coming up through this, that we've got this sort of yin baseline, and then the next full moon is going to be in Gemini with the sun in Sagittarius, of how do we bring play into this, right? So that's the next step along on the lunar pathway. Right, let's move on to the next card. So we're going through a very intense Akashic Stargate. I think there was one little thing that I wanted to say. How do you spell this? Okay, here we go. Also, no matter how you get there, you'll always end up in a similar space. Also know that purpose isn't about doing your duty. It's about living life and experiencing joy. So it's that Mars in Scorpio, very determined, very like at the helm. There is an element of duty, of loyalty. It's fixed energy. But then Venus in Cardinal Libra, of saying, hey, we need to find some kind of balance here. We need to bring in some joy into this sense of purpose. Otherwise we lose our spirit, right? My hand's just gone over my heart chakra. when we're too in responsibility mode, right? Moderation, everything in moderation, including moderation. So now we've got the fault line, the fissure, the crack, the weak line. Imagine walking across a frozen lake that begins to crack before your eyes. No matter how optimistic and brave you might be, panic ensues. You become fearful and tense and long for stable ground. Such is the energy of the fault line. It's the energy of walking on eggshells, of precarious dynamics, of sensing what is ready to break open into chaos. It's likely this cracking open is overdue, as fault lines develop slowly and naturally from underlying elemental pressures. This card comes as a potent warning not to deny the shakiness that's afoot. It's much better to prepare yourself for change than to walk along the fault line pretending all is well. There is no easy fix for the situation at hand. It will require a foundational shift that alters the current dynamics from the ground up. When light, redefining reality, breaking open. Right. In Japanese, kintsugi, gold is used to mend cracks. Breaks are thought of as precious rather than something to be hidden. Now, this is linking into Uranus for me, for the liberation energy. Uranus for me is the path clearer, the breaker of chains, right? There are usually things in your life that you sense aren't going well, but you maybe don't have the resources or the energy in order to deal with that. Uranus comes along and shakes that all up. So there's this sense of a discombobulating energy that is breaking and cracking open into the new vessel. We've just come out of eclipse season. This very much feels like a soothing, with everything that's come with it, of everything that's kind of been cracked open with the eclipses, and now we're establishing a stronger base of independence and liberation within that can feel really unsteady, right? Because it's bringing in a sense of change away from social structures that we kowtow to, this ability to say your truth in a room where you don't know whether it's going to land, you don't know whether you're comfortable, you don't know whether you're at ease with how other people are going to respond to you. This energy is creating space in the vessel, in order for you to be able to face those things with the confidence, because we've got Mercury square Saturn. Saturn's about integrity. Mercury in Sagittarius is about that sense of knowing about the longer term plan, right? So we're bringing in a sense of integrity with the way that we take action, and that means that we are no longer hostage to the fears and the constraints around, okay, it's pointing to the karmic relationships, around social dynamics that are part of our soul's journey to limit us in order to set us free, take us through the Akashic Stargate. That's linked into so many different lifetimes where we're bringing that purpose of our soul into this frequency. Okay, they're just really tapping over over my heart chakra. Love that. Right, okay, so let's move on to the next card. But just generally, okay, because this card really wanted to be underneath this, that this feels like the Mars, Uranian, Lilith energy, all in fixed signs. Fixed signs can really struggle with change, right? It can be very discombobulating. But as I said, we had a lot of support from Venus. So this is Rumi's Gift Oracle deck, and this is by Ari Hunava. And this is a collection of poems with cards from the Sufi mystic Rumi, who referred to God as the beloved, saw love at the foundational fundamental part of connecting to source, connecting to the outside world. Right, so we've got support. If the brush of love hasn't painted your heart, you might as well be a stone or a piece of wood. They say greed brings war and virtue peace. I say love sets fire to both war and peace. When love's mouth opens, it is a whale swallowing both the heaven and earth. And when your arms are open to love, it embraces you and frees you from your imprisonment. No need to feel helpless. Fall into love's embrace, and you will see heaven and earth are only here to serve you. What a powerful poem. I might have to read that one again because it is really just bringing in everything. And I pulled these cards before the Saturday where we had the March for Peace. So If the brush of love hasn't painted your heart, you might as well be a stone or a piece of wood. They say greed brings war and virtue peace. I say love sets fire to both war and peace. When love's mouth opens, it is a whale swallowing both heaven and earth. And when your arms are open to love, it embraces you and frees you from your imprisonment. No need to feel helpless. Fall into love's embrace, and you will see heaven and earth are only here to serve you. How utterly powerful is that? That is really highlighting the power of love, right? Maybe go and listen to that track. Good classic 80s rock ballad. You know, just the fact that it's saying this is, you know, we had the polarity. Where was the polarity here in karmic relationships? The self and the other, right? War and peace, one side or the other. There's this sense of separation. But what love calls is that love is in everything, and love will open up everything. In that empty room, interestingly, it was doing some clearing. So I forgot to mention in the beginning, for those of you who are new, I channel energies through my body. So often when you see my hands moving around, it is not me, it is the energies. And they were doing some energetic work with this polarity, with this conflict, bringing in love, taking that through the Stargate, as well as healing whatever fault lines are coming up and opening up the possibilities, especially the whale swallowing love. When love's mouth open, not even love entirety, but just its mouth, is a whale swallowing both heaven and earth. And very interestingly, we have the ocean card as the final card that wanted to be read in this reading. One of the things that the themes that's linked around this poem is this element of possession, of hierarchy of structures, of preferring one thing over the other, of seeking out items, seeking out consumerism, as a binding, as a cloak around you that gives you a sense of self. This card calls to take that back to love, and to hold that tenant as your predominant energy, that then opens up the world to you, and is saying heaven and earth are then in alignment with your needs, with your wants, and the way that you flow through the world. Right, final card. Sorry, I lost the bookmark, so 1 second, you bear with me. The ocean. Right, so before I read this, I'm going to talk about the astrology. So Neptune was over in Pisces, which is traditionally linked into the ocean, was trining Mars, Ceres, the Sun, and the Moon. And Neptune, for me, is that connection to source energy, all the frequencies, all the dimensions, all the realities, all the possibilities. It can be quite a lot of energy with Neptune, can be very idealistic, can be delusional. But what I was getting with this beautiful trine, which is an aspect of Jupiter, wanting to bring elevation, wisdom, a sense of expansion, cohesion, a sense of knowing, and a confidence, a deep confidence linked into wisdom. And with that, we bring about opportunities, luck, and generosity. That with this trine with Neptune in a fellow water sign, which is more open to the possibilities of every path. All paths walk to the same mountain, all rivers lead to the same ocean. There's a dreamlike, fluky, magical energy of Pisces that's feeding wisdom into this new moon, this very fixed, intense energy of Scorpio. I love Scorpio energy. So many people in my life are Scorpio. I love the honesty, even if it can be very brutal. I love the passion. I love the drive and motivation. But there is an intensity to Scorpio that can pull us into shame, that can pull us into heavier negative emotions that are part of the soul's journey. But they, as I said at the beginning, don't hold us, right? This trine with Neptune very much felt like, with this liberation, with everything that's going on with Venus, this trine with Neptune felt like a new vibrational frequency coming in from source energy, which is love, in my opinion, and many others. That is bringing in a new vibrational frequency to liberate that energy within us, right? So very funny that we got the ocean card. The unconscious, the depths, the incomprehensible. The power of the ocean is unmatched. To step into its salty waters is to step into the unknown. So we've got unknown at the beginning and we've got unknown at the end. By its sheer volume, the ocean represents the unconscious. all that is beyond our understanding. We cannot live within the ocean. We cannot claim it, manage it, or own it. It rejects our every attempt to dominate nature. Yet, amid its overwhelming power, it calls to us, it inspires us, and invigorates our life on land. It dissolves the little us into the big us. When the energy of the ocean is present, there is a change stirring beyond any change you've known before. The ego must dissolve. The saline swells work on your every cell, your fibers, your deepest underlying beliefs. Like Aphrodite, Venus, we rise from the ocean's froth, a new being. Life is change. Let the waves crash. When light, deeper than deep, big dreams, discovery. So pretty powerful. The thing that jumped out to me immediately with that is dissolving the little us into the big us. So we're moving away from that polarity to the acknowledgement of the journeys, the acknowledgement of your own journey, the love, the encompassment of love, and just realizing that we are all one within the same space. And you know, as I said, that sort of very liberating individual energy, as well as the acceptance of other people's journey, that we are a part of this big ecosystem, right? I love the phrase, where is it? When the energy of the ocean is present, there is change stirring that is beyond any change you've known before, right? So that, I mean, it really, as I said, from what I've witnessed collectively, on an individual basis, so individuals, but in a collective individual basis, that shift seems incredibly apparent. And we're just at the beginning of this, because this is a new moon. It's part of a 6-month cycle to the full moon in Scorpio next year. And it felt just, there's a softness to it. There's no getting away. And there's also more confidence and comfortability in being the individual. Right. That was such an honor to read. I'm just reminded that I cut the deck 3 times. I got the 5 of Cups again, which was the grief card in reverse, which we got in the collective reading. The 8 of Pentacles, whistle while you work, your mastering of self. And then the 10 of Cups to finish, right? This sense of completement and emotional alignment in every area of your life, right? So this ability to transform those intense, fixed emotional energies, to liberate us, to bring about deep transformation, Scorpio energy, and bring us into the light. And I absolutely, as I said, such an honor and a privilege to read these. I always love doing the oracle cards, even if sometimes they don't always come up in the collective readings, but it just brings about such a poetry, and it's always it's part of the magical reality that we live in, that it's often so poignant how much these cards represent the narratives that come through when I do the collective readings. So thank you all for being here, and do check out the rest of the channel for different transits. There's a lot of longer term transits that are still there. Jupiter in Taurus, Saturn in Pisces, the nodal series as well. They're still very relevant. And so I really hope you enjoy what came through today. Be good to yourselves, be good to those around you, and most importantly, be well until we meet again.